record. Okay, so for today's class, a couple of blocks might be helpful, not necessary, and something like a blanket or a block to sit on at the beginning. If you do have blocks, you can just set them off at either end of your mat, behind your mat. And then we're going to start today in a seated position. So this month, we've really been investigating movement and yoga from a breathing perspective. So we're going to continue that today. So we'll work with a simple kind of familiar type poses and match it again with breath. On Tuesday, we did pendiculations, which were really subtle movements that kind of focused on the different movements of the spine. I'm integrating that into today's class. It may be obvious, it may be less obvious, but just know that it's kind of that same idea of the different ways that the spine move. And we'll start with more subtle movements and then bring them into more larger movements using the breath as kind of a way and a guide into that. So we'll start in a comfortable seated position. And maybe by this time, your comfortable seated position has started to shift. So we're looking for those familiar cues to help to find that zone of apposition between the pelvis and the rib cage, where the diaphragm can more fully expand and create that intra-abdominal pressure that helps to stabilize the core or the spine so that everything else can move from a place of stability. So begin by first finding your sit bones, either on the floor or the surface that you have chosen to sit in. And when the sit bones are connected to the earth, it helps to put the hips in a more neutral position where your hip points at the front of your hips are in the same alignment as the back of the pelvis. So if you think of the pelvis like a bowl, it's neither tilting too far forward or tilting too far back, kind of in that neutral position. And then bringing the lower ribs kind of in towards each other and drawing down towards the pubic bone, helping to put the bowl of your rib cage so it mirrors the bowl of your pelvis. You may feel that your shoulders naturally sit above your hips in this position. And then broadening across your collarbones, creating the sense of a smile with your collarbones, where the ends of your collarbones that attach to your shoulders widen and lift slightly upwards. Chin is drawing towards your neck and then scooping up towards your throat, creating length in the back of your neck. The tongue is resting gently on the roof of your mouth with the tip of your tongue touching the back of your teeth. Eyes can be closed or remain slightly open, where the gaze is not on anything in particular. I'm just starting by noticing your natural breath. Noticing the quality, Do you feel the inhalations and exhalations smooth, or do you find those areas where they're a bit rough and jerky? And as you move into the quality of your breath and you just start to settle on that, do you feel a shift? Feeling a very light passing of the air in and out through your nostrils. And as you first start to sense the breath coming in and out through the nostrils, can you lighten the breath to the point where you can barely feel the inhalations and exhalations as they pass through the nostrils? The breath is so light that you can barely hear the breath within the mind space between the ears. And then noticing where in your torso you feel the breath more predominantly. So the region of the belly, the region of the lower lungs, and the bottom of your rib cage, or do you feel it in your chest? As you start to recognize where you feel the breath more predominantly, can you shift to more of that diaphragmatic expansion by feeling the sides of the rib cage expand with each inhalation? And then that same area becoming smaller, moving inward as you exhale. And this awareness doesn't have to be a big breath, and just a slight recognition of lower lung expansion with each inhalation. Feeling the sides and the back of the rib cage. And slow release as you exhale. So keeping your awareness in this space, I'm going to start to introduce a 1-to-1 ratio. So where your inhalation and your exhalation are the same length. So wherever you are in your breath, go ahead and release and exhale. And then inhale for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. So continue with this pace, keeping the breath low in the lungs, keeping it light. So little sound or little sensation of the breath coming in through the nose. And keeping it at a length that is comfortable for you. So if this 4 by 4 count is too much, you can bring it back to 3 and 3. As we start to use pranayama or breath control, we may have a tendency to try to make the breath bigger. And if you feel that, acknowledge that, notice that, and see if you can see if you can focus on keeping it low, slow, and light instead. As we start to bring the breath into more of a subtle state, start to notice how this shows up in your mind and in your body. I'm going to start to introduce some movement. So staying with your 1 by 1 pace, just start to rock a little side to side. And there's not any way that this needs to look. It should feel natural. Just kind of allowing your shoulders and your head to rock side to side, feeling the rib cage kind of rock side to side. And notice how this changes your experience with this breath. If you had to slow it down to 3 and 3 as you add movement, do you feel that maybe it becomes a little easier to go to the 4 and 4? And as you continue to move, we're going to start to extend the exhalations. So on your next exhalation, increase the length of your exhalation by 1. So if you were moving at 3 and 3, extend the exhalation to 4. And if you were at 4 and 4, extend the exhalation to 5. And then we're going to continue to extend the exhalation every other breath. So you'll stay at that extended length for 2 breaths. And then on the 3rd breath, you'll extend it by 1 more count. And you'll continue this until your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation. And in the past, we've been working with the vritti, which is where your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation, but more from the standpoint of holding the body still. So just notice what it feels like to find a longer exhalation and a relaxed movement and kind of a subtle, natural movement. And as you work on extending your exhalation to be twice as long as your inhalation, once you reach that point, on your next exhalation, at the bottom of your exhalation, you're going to use your thumb and your first finger to plug your nose. And then hold in that space of sustained exhalation for as long as you can comfortably as you continue to rock. And then in between, you'll take a normal breath, so not pausing. And then every other breath, you'll plug your nose again for that sustained exhalation with movement. So sometimes being in that sustained pause at the end of the exhalation can be somewhat, for lack of a better word, anxiety producing. So notice if you do it with movement and you allow yourself to release when you feel the urge to breathe again, can you sustain your exhalation for longer and longer periods by kind of noticing your rocking? Like how many times do you rock side to side? And so we have a short, light inhalation. We have a long, light exhalation, followed by a easy pause while we maintain just a natural rhythm of rocking. And the next time you exhale, release this and just come back to stillness and allow your breath to return to normal. And take a moment to feel what that feels like physically in your body, mentally in your mind, and then noticing how your natural breath has shifted, if it's shifted at all. I'm going to take this into a physical practice. So when you're ready, we're going to come to the front of our mats in Tadasana, or mountain pose. So standing with your feet hip distance apart, start with your hands beside your hips, feeling the 4 points of your feet ground into the earth, so creating a stable position of your legs and finding your cues. Notice your pelvic rim. Notice if your hip points tilt forward or back, finding neutral. Shifting the ribs to mirror the pelvis. So lower ribs drawing in and slightly down. Shoulders broadening across the fronts of the collarbone. Chin tucked, neck long. Eyes gazing straight ahead. Tongue resting on the roof of the mouth. We'll start by finding that 1-2 breath. So vritti. So whatever breath seemed natural when you were seated on the floor, whether it be a 3 and 3 count or a 4 and 4 count, just allow yourself to find that natural rhythm of your breath. Again, noticing the tendency to try to breathe big and just see if you can stay in a natural state rather than trying to increase the depth or the size of your breath. Think more of breathing deep in the lungs. Once you find your natural rhythm, on your next inhalation, simply bring your arms over your head. And keeping your natural rhythm, bring your arms down beside your body. So we're just going to explore arms moving up and over your head as you inhale, and as you exhale, bringing it down. So finding your natural pace. And then beginning to increase your exhalation. So by 1 breath or by 1 count, as you exhale, slow down the pace at which you bring your arms down beside your body. Keeping the same length of the breath as you inhale. So if you started at 3, you keep your inhale for a count of 3. And you just start to increase the length of your exhalation by 1 every other breath. Coming to that point where you can comfortably find your exhalation to be twice as long as your inhalation. So keeping this pace of where your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation. On your next exhalation, bend your knees, send your hips back, and fold forward into a forward fold. Keep your inhalation the same rate as you lift up halfway, hands come to your shins. And then exhalation twice as long as your inhalation as you fold. Keeping your regular pace for your inhalation, bring your arms over your head. And that long, slow exhalation to bring your arms down beside your body. So we're going to do this for several cycles. Noticing as you stay connected to this longer exhalation added with movement. Can you maintain it? Do you need to slow down? Do you need to change the length of your inhalation in order to keep your exhalation twice as long? So again, we're going from that upright position with arms over your head into a forward fold. So just simple half salutations. Lifting up halfway, and you may not be where I am. So kind of maintaining where you are rather than trying to match it with where I am. And then finally coming back up. Just allow this to settle in your body a few more times. Noticing if you feel the need to breathe more and acknowledging that and allowing yourself to maybe take an extra quick inhale and exhale. And then can you settle back into this pace? We're going to take one more full cycle of this half salutation. Where your exhalations are light and easy and twice as long as your inhalations. When you come into the forward fold on the cycle that you're on now, just pause. Knees are bent, hips fold back. And grab your opposite elbow and just hang. Allow the crown of the head to reach towards the floor, releasing any tension or gripping you feel in your neck. And just come into a natural breath. So allowing this vritti or 1-2 breath cycle go and breathe normally. And release the hands to the floor. Step back into downward facing dog. Spread your fingers wide. First finger is parallel, feeling all 10 knuckles root down into the earth. Lift up onto your toes, bend your knees, lift and spread your sit bones. And then either knees bent or straight, start to reach your heel towards the ground. Again, finding a natural breath. And can you feel the expansion of the lungs deep in the rib cage, feeling all sides of the bottoms of your rib cage expand as you inhale, and soften and close as you exhale. And shift your weight onto your left foot. Reach your right leg up and back. Exhaling slowly, so your long right, bring your knee towards your nose. Step your right foot up between your hands. Stay on your left toes, bending your right knee above your right ankle joint. Climb your hands up onto your right knee and then lift all the way up into a crescent warrior, bringing your hands behind your head. So you're going to start with some really subtle movements using that 1-to-1 breath ratio. So where your inhalation and exhalations are the same length. So as you inhale, gently press your head into your hands and find a slight extension of your spine. And as you exhale, as if you're taking your ribs down towards the fronts of your hips, finding a slight flexion in the spine. So find your natural pace. Maybe it's 3-3, maybe it's 4-4, and just move back and forth between extension and flexion in your spine. So your hips stay still. You're probably going to feel this most in your mid-thoracic, so where the ribs attach to the lower ribs attached to the spine. But see if you can bring a little bit of it into your lower back as well. On your next inhalation, stay up and bring your arms over your head. So now moving into that 1-2 breath. Inhale for your natural count, so either 3 or 4. And as you exhale, start to increase the length of your exhale as you fold, reaching your belly out over your thigh. So you're just increasing it by 1. And maintain that for 2 cycles. So where your exhalation is just 1 count longer than your inhalation. And after 2 cycles, increase it by another count. Keeping it soft, keeping it slow, and keeping it low in your low in your lungs. So every other move, you find that increase of your exhalation by 1. And if you're able to increase it all the way to where your inhalation is twice as long as your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation, do that. And the next time you come up, stay up and open into warrior 2. You're gonna take a break in your hip. So straighten the right leg. Bring your hands behind your head. And then bend your knee again above your ankle joint. So starting with those small pendiculations of the spine. As you inhale, a slight tilt to the left. And as you exhale, a slight tilt to the right. So finding first that 1-to-1 breath with small movements. So either 3-3 or 4-4. And notice how it's different as you move from a place of strength in the legs and the adjustments that you need to make. And come back up to center, extend the arms long. And we'll go back into the slow extension of your exhalation. So as you inhale, do your normal length. As you come into reverse warrior. And as you exhale, start to increase the length of your exhale by 1 count every other breath. So moving with awareness, not only of the movement, but mostly of the breath. Can you find that comfortable rate where your exhalation is longer than your inhalation and it's not forceful? So you're able to keep it low in the lungs, slow pace, and light. Little sound, little movement in the nostrils. And come back up. Turn to face the front of your mat again, coming onto your back toes, and then lower your knee to the ground. Bring your left hand to the floor, either on a block or on the floor. Bring your right hand behind your head. And starting with small movements first, we're going to go into rotation now. So that 3 to 3 or 4 to 4, find small movements in your spine as you start to rotate. So the hips stay steady, stable. You feel probably the rotation more in that mid-spine area than any other area. And the next time you come open, stay open and lift the arm up and back. And then starting to extend your exhale, start to reach your right arm underneath your left arm. So your inhalation stays either at that 3 or 4, and every other move, you increase your exhalation by 1 count. Noticing as you start to use this more and more, are you able to find a more slow and sustained and relaxed exhale with movement? Next time you come up, bring your right hand onto your right knee. Take your left foot behind you to the right side of your mat and come up, facing the long edge of the left side of your mat. Turn your right toes to face the long edge of your mat and your legs straight. Bring your left hand to the floor. Bring your right hand behind your head. Press down through your left hand and rotate your shoulder open. So externally rotate your arm bone. Press your head into your hands, gaze up towards the sky. And take 3 cycles of breath where your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation. Or whatever pace you can comfortably sustain a more relaxed breath. On your next inhalation, lift your right leg off the ground. Take it behind you and then turn this into a back bend. So right foot reaches back further, chest rotates up towards the sky. Can you sustain that 1-2 breath in this more open back bend position? Look forward and then look down at the mat. Bring both hands to the back of your mat and step back into downward facing dog. Letting your breath return to normal. So letting all the counts go. Letting your body kind of relax and rest as far as the breath goes. And then shift your weight onto your right foot. Inhaling for a count of 3 or 4, lift your left leg up and back into 3-legged dog. As you move the knee towards the nose, try to double the length of your exhalation. Stepping your left foot up between your hands. Stay on your back toes. Left knee above your ankle joint. Bring your hands to your thighs and press yourself up into crescent warrior. Bring your hands behind your head. And starting first with that 1-to-1 breath with subtle light movements of flexion and extension. Inhaling to find a slight back bend or extension in the spine. And then exhaling, finding that crunch in the front of your spine, by moving your ribs towards the tops of your pelvis. So just explore the subtle movement, so more like the pendiculations that we did on Tuesday, using a one-to-one breath. Keeping the breath light and slow. And then bring your arms over your head. And now moving with the breath and keeping your inhalation at the same length as you start to exhale, and increase the length of your exhale by 1 every other movement. As you start to bring in bigger movements, we notice it's a little bit harder to sustain that low, slow, and light breath. So using the awareness of slowly increasing your exhalations to keep the breath controlled. The next time you rise up, drop your right heel down and in and come into warrior 2. And again, you're staying with your own breath, so if it doesn't match mine, that's okay. So left knee is bent above the ankle joint. Bring the hands behind the head, starting with those light and little pendiculations of lateral side bending. Either the 3-3-4-4, start to move, inhaling towards the right leg and exhaling towards the left leg. Noticing as you start to open up your rib cage, is there a tendency to try to make the breath bigger? Can you keep it low, slow, and light? And next time you come up, stay up, extend the arms. And then moving with awareness, the inhalation stay short. The exhalation start to increase in length by 1 count every other move. And just that extension of the arm, which creates a little bit more load on the torso, can have the effect of feeling like you need to take a bigger breath. Can you stay with a small breath to keep your breath low on the lungs, slow on the exhalations, and light through the nose? Next time you come up, come to warrior 2. Turn your hips towards your left leg as you come onto your back toes, and lower your right knee towards the ground. You can lower your hand either to the floor or the block inside of your left foot. Start with your left hand behind your head, and starting first with those very subtle and little twists in your mid-spine. Starting with the equal parts breath, the vritti. And then starting to increase as you open up, reach the arm up and back. And then as you exhale, increasing the length of your exhale every other move as you make the movement a little bit bigger. What does it feel like to keep the breath lighter or smaller or more subtle as you twist? Can you keep the pace of your exhalation low, slow, and light, even as you twist? Next time you come up, stay up. Keep your left knee bent as you take your right foot to the outside edge of the back of your mat, and then rotate your torso towards the front long edge of your mat. Bring your right hand to the floor towards the front of your mat. Straighten your left leg, toes pointing towards the front edge of your mat. Reach the arm up. Pause here. Can you sustain the 1-2 breath count? And then lifting the left foot off the ground, take it behind you to the floor beyond your mat. Rotate your head and your rib cage up towards the sky. So finding a back bend. Can you sustain a long, slow exhale? Turn your head forward and then look down at the front of your mat. Come into downward facing dog and return your breath to normal. So letting any count of the breath go. Let any awareness of trying to shift how you breathe go. And just breathe normal. So we're going to go with this same flow for several more cycles. We're going to skip the movement in each pose, but we're going to try to use the same breath count. So maybe as you were, go ahead and come down to your knees. So come into child's pose. So if you found it challenging to have the exhalation twice as long as your inhalation, find a rate where it's comfortable, where you can sustain it without too many feelings of like being forced to go too long. So you're going to find a comfortable pace of your breath, but trying to make it so that your exhalation is slightly longer than your inhalation. And so reach the arms towards the front of your mat again. Shift up to hands and knees. Tuck your toes under and reach your hips up and back into downward facing dog. Shift your weight onto your left foot. Your natural inhalation length, lift your right leg up and back. Finding your exhalation at that natural longer rate, bring your knee towards your nose and step your right foot up between your hands. Staying on your back toes, front knee bent, your rate of inhalation, rise up. Low, slow, long exhalation. Hinge forward, reaching your belly out over your thighs. So we're only going to do this once. Your inhalation to lift back up. Drop left heel down and in, and rotate open into warrior two. Your inhalation takes you into reverse warrior. A nice long, slow exhalation takes you into side angle pose. So try to maintain a long exhalation. Your inhalation lifts you back up. Turn to face the front of your mat. Arms come over your head. Come onto your back toes. Your low, long exhalation lowers you down. Hand comes inside of your foot. Right hand behind your head. Inhale, open, so twist open your inhalation. And then taking that low, slow, long exhalation for one twist, reaching arm underneath, left arm. Inhale, lift back up. Hand behind your head. Reach your arms over your head. Turn to face the long edge of your mat as you open up. Right leg straightens. Slow exhalation takes left hand to the floor. You can stay in this position, or you can come into your side plank with your right hand reaching up. Pause and find a slow breath. So as we find things more challenging, notice what happens to your breath. Take your right foot back and find either on your knees, what we did the last time, or a wild thing, and take 2 slow breaths. Turn your head forward, rotate back. Now we're at the back of the mat and come into downward facing dog. Pause and find your natural breath. Shifting your weight onto your right foot. Your inhalation takes your left leg up and back. Your slow exhalation brings your knee towards your nose and up between your hands steps your foot. Your inhalation lifts you up. And your long, slow exhalation hinges you forward, belly towards your thigh. Your inhalation lifts you up. Your exhalation opens you up into warrior 2. Long and slow. Your inhalation, reverse. Keep your exhalation long, light, and easy as you move into side angle. Inhale, come up. Turn towards the front of your mat. Your exhalation lowers your back knee towards the floor. Right hand comes to the floor inside of left foot. Hand behind your head. Your inhalation opens you up where your arm straightens. Low, slow, long exhalation takes you into a twist. Arm reaches behind right arm. Open back up. And then lift up onto your back knee as you bring the arms over your head and twist open towards the long edge of your mat. Right hand lowers down as you exhale. You can either stay in this position on your right knee or shift right foot under left for side plank. Pausing for a couple of breaths, trying to maintain that low, slow, and light breath. Lift your left leg up and step it back. Find your back bend for 2 full cycles of a breath. Turn your head forward. Bring your hands to the mat and step back to downward facing dog. Pausing to find a natural breath. So we're allowing the time for our body to come back into neutral, moving away from a controlled breath into a natural breath, letting go of control to rest the mind. So for this cycle, all I'm going to do is tell you the next pose that is coming up. I want you to kind of stay in a zone of staying connected to your breath and noticing, is it a little bit more easier to keep your breath at a slow pace without using the breath to speed up the movement or speed up your mind? So we'll start with right leg. On your own pace, come into three-legged dog. Using your exhalation to bring the foot up. Our first pose is the crescent warrior. So using your wisdom to take you into the inhalation and then connection to take you into that kind of forward fold. The next pose that we'll move to is warrior two, using the movements and your awareness of breath to move you into it. The inhalation is the reverse warrior. The exhalation is side angle. We'll come back into a crescent warrior to face the front of the mat. And the exhalation takes you down into a low lunge. Using your breath to move into the twist at your pace. How slow can you keep your exhalation to move into your twist? Finding the next position into that gate pose that will eventually take you into your side plank or supported side plank on your knee. Pausing for a couple of breath cycles in a more challenging pose to notice if you can keep the breath slow. And then finding a back bend with the same awareness. And when you're ready, returning to downward facing dog to find neutral and a normal breath. And how is your breath changing? How's your mind responding to this? It can be really challenging when we're moving to keep a slow, light, and low breath. You may notice the tendency to want to mouth breathe or pick up the pace. Sometimes we have to allow ourselves those moments to do it, but always coming back to trying to find that pace once again. So final side, using your own inhalation, three-legged dog. Stepping forward with your exhalation. Crescent warrior. Slow exhale to fold. Finding those movements with the breath that take you into warrior. And then finding your side bending in the warrior poses. And then giving the spine the option to twist. Use your breath to move you into the low lunge where you find the twist you can create with your breath. And finally, finding your way into the gate pose. And then the side plank variation, in order to tune into how your body changes when you challenge it in balance that takes a lot of effort. And then the final pose is the back bend. Notice how opening the chest tends to quicken the pace of the breath and find a way to connect, tune in, slow down, and then coming back into neutral one last time, and downward facing dog to release the control of the breath and to slow the mind down, slow the body down, and the breath. Slowly lower your knees to the floor. Toes touch, knees wide, child's pose. Finding the natural expansion that comes so easy in this position. And making your way onto your back for Shavasana. Opting either for traditional Shavasana with legs extended long, or more of a constructive rest position with your knees bent and moving in towards each other to support. Find the natural curves of your spine. Tongue resting gently on the roof of your mouth. And jaw muscles relaxed. Neck muscles relaxed. Shoulder muscles relaxed. Hips, belly. Coming back into that quiet breath. First, sensing the movement of the breath in and out through the nostrils. And lightening the breath so that you can barely feel the air as it passes. If there was a feather beneath your nose, the feather wouldn't move with your exhale. Or draw up towards your nose as you inhale. And the breath is barely audible within the mind. With a gentle sense of awareness that with each inhalation, every cell of your body softly and gently expands. There's no awareness that one space expands more than the other. It's just this gentle expansion of every cell in your body. And as you exhale, a gentle release. Notice where your breath is right now. Can you sense the sensation of pause, the natural pause at the end of your exhale? What does it feel like to naturally release into this inward pause? What is the response of the body and the mind to this breath? And as we prepare to move, notice what happens as you come out of this state of stillness and making your way slowly, intentionally into a seated position. And bringing your hands to rest at heart center. Bow your head towards your heart center. Taking a moment, one last moment to rest in this space of ease, the space of letting go, the pause. As we prepare for moving off of our mat, knowing that anytime this pause is there for the taking, for the reset. Thank you so much. The divine in me honors the divine in you.